This forecast is brought to you by me. For information on readings I offer, check out my website at manic.mercurian.net, or you can reach out to me directly at manic.mercurian@gmail.com. And as usual, all of that information is in the description box below. Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, January 30th through Sunday, February 5th, 2023. So let's set the stage for this week here. So just a couple weeks ago, we still had Mercury retrograde, we had Mars retrograde, and Uranus was still retrograde. So we were very much in the midst of these retrograde energies. It was all about contemplation and gaining more insight, changing our perspective, things that sound great on paper, but were kind of difficult and convoluted to go through, I think. And I think oftentimes what's even more dysfunctional than retrograde energy is the transition we experience when we go from heavy retrograde energy to direct energy. So that's why, last week and the week prior, that kind of time period, I think was difficult for a lot of us because we had to transition from really heavy retrograde energy to really heavy direct energy. So now, as we enter this week, all the planets are direct. They are, fully direct, so to speak. So we've kind of experienced that transition from the heavy retrograde energy to the direct energy. So now we are very much moving forward. We're in new territory. I did want to mention that although all the planets are direct and they're fully direct, they're fully moving forward, Mercury is still in its post shadow until February 7th. So basically what that means is Mercury is still transiting over the part of Capricorn that it just went backward over from our perspective. So what that means for us is that we're still dealing with the same themes that we were during Mercury retrograde, but the good news is that we're dealing with those themes in a much more productive, linear, forward-moving way. So we're not dealing with that kind of retrograde energy of, going backward and thinking about the past and trying to figure things out in a different way and all that kind of stuff. We've done that, hopefully we've done that work and gained the perspective from all of that retrograde period stuff. So now, we're still dealing with those same themes, whatever it was that you may have been struggling with over the last several weeks or whatever you gained insight on, you may still be dealing with that, but you're probably moving forward now, making a lot more gains, being a lot more productive. Things are making sense now. We are moving forward much more quickly. So that's the good news here. Otherwise, for this week, the moon will be transiting from Taurus through Leo. I always talk about how this is such a great part of the sky to have the moon in, because all of these signs the moon does really great in: Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo. Moon's exalted in Taurus, it's in domicile in Cancer. I would say moon is in joy in Gemini. It's a really fun sign to have the moon in. And when the moon gets to Leo, we will have a full moon in Leo this week as well. That's probably the biggest headline for sure. To be totally honest with you, there aren't a lot of aspects, but that full moon in Leo is an intense one for sure. Moon does pretty great in Leo. Leo is the sign which the sun rules, and the sun and the moon are kind of have they're almost like two sides of the same coin. They have to do with similar but opposing themes. So they kind of almost work well in each other's signs. The full moon in Leo, I think, is a pretty potent one for sure. Leo is such a potent sign. It has such a strong energy to it. It's a very proud, fiery, kind of masculine energy. So I think that full moon does look like a lot of fun. It will have one major aspect. It will square Uranus, and I'm going to save my interpretation on that full moon and that aspect for the day, when we get to that day by day forecast. If you want to skip to that, it is Sunday, February 5th, when we will have that full moon in Leo. But definitely fun stuff. I think that it does bring some of those like summery Leo vibes into what would otherwise be a pretty kind of dry and cold climate, so to speak, astrologically. So I think that is fun. It's nice that we have the moon, which travels so quickly, to bring in, some energies from other parts of the zodiac, so we get a little bit more of a mix. Because otherwise we really don't have a lot of fire energy right now. We don't have a lot of, those summer signs. The energy is kind of lacking from these other parts of the zodiac right now. The main focus is the sun in Aquarius, Mercury in Capricorn. Venus is in Pisces now since last week, so that's nice. We have, the energy of love, pleasure, desire, and abundance, all that is exalted now in Pisces. So looks like a good week here. So let's just kind of get into the day by day forecast here. Okay, so I started out ahead of myself here. So let's go back to Monday, January 30th. So we start out with the moon still in the last part of Taurus, but then pretty quickly the moon does leave Taurus and enter Gemini. So that's a lot of fun. Moon was exalted in Taurus, so that is like technically sort of the strongest moon sign. So, in the first kind of hours of Monday, moon will still be in Taurus. So that points to us having kind of the best shot at being emotionally very grounded. There is that kind of weird exception that we have because North Node and Uranus are both in Taurus, so that does bring about instability to what would otherwise be a pretty stable transit, emotionally speaking. But then pretty quickly, even you can see like even later in the morning Eastern Standard Time, moon will already be in Gemini. So I say the moon is in joy in Gemini because it can be thought of as the most fun sign to have the moon in. Because moon represents our emotions, and when moon is in Gemini, we don't get bogged down by particularly heavy or difficult emotions. We tend to be a little bit more light and detached and playful. So that's why this is a very fun transit, generally speaking. Of course, how you experience this will depend on your own chart and where moon in Gemini falls. Where does this fall in your chart? That will change this experience for you, but for all of us, kind of generally speaking, this is a pretty fun transit. This is especially fun because now the moon is stepping into a trine with the sun. So sun is at 10 degrees Aquarius. Moon by late Monday night, moon will be stepping into that exact trine with the sun. But really all day Monday we can already feel this trine building up. And this is happening in air signs. Sun is in Aquarius, moon is in Gemini. Both of these are air. So the energy is very much focused on, it's very intellectual. So there could be really great conversations right now. People may be extra interested in people. Air energy, is focused on people, ideas, thoughts, deep conversations, also shallow conversations too. Air signs just love conversating. They love exchanging information, whether that information be shallow and trivial or deep and profound. Air signs just love information. They don't really care how deep or shallow it is. They just love information. So that's kind of the focus that we all can experience. Also with sun and the moon trining each other today, it's a very stable, very harmonious kind of dynamic here. It is interesting having it in the air signs. We may not be taking things super seriously right now. We may just be kind of having fun and being experimental. Both Gemini and Aquarius are very experimental in their nature. They don't so much value the status quo. They want to change things. So it's kind of an interesting focus starting out the week here. We may be very kind of playful and just having a good time, having fun conversations right now. I do think it's definitely an upbeat start to the week here. Okay, let's go forward to Tuesday, January 31st. So we still are within orb of that exact trine between the moon and the sun. Technically it happens around midnight going from Monday to Tuesday. So I would say Monday and Tuesday we're still, definitely experiencing that moon trining the sun. This is one of the most tangible, aspects you can experience. People are generally in a pretty upbeat, good mood when the moon is trining the sun like this. So definitely a lot of fun conversations, for sure. I would expect the moon does cross over Mars either late on Monday or early on Tuesday, depending on where you are. So that could bring about a little bit of, I don't know, kind of debating energy, or people being a little bit snippy or sarcastic, snarky. I wouldn't take any of this too seriously. It is happening in Gemini, which is such a kind of playful sign, doesn't take anything too seriously. But There could be that kind of like argumentative energy. But other than that, this is a pretty stable, harmonious dynamic here. But I did want to point out that one exception. Other than that, those stable vibes from Monday continue for Tuesday. We're still very much interested in people and ideas. We're wanting those deep conversations. We're still feeling pretty stable and harmonious. And I think this looks really nice. Again, all the planets are direct. So I think we're feeling very stable. We're probably feeling more stable right now than we have in at least several weeks, maybe much longer, I think. Collectively, this looks really good. It looks like an easy energy, I think, starting out here. For Wednesday, February 1st, we start out the month with Moon ending its transit through Gemini, and then you can see afternoon Eastern Standard Time, Moon will enter Cancer. So this does change the dynamic emotionally. We do tend to be more emotional when the Moon is going through Cancer. That's its domicile sign. So Moon is at one of its kind of peak strengths when it's going through Cancer. So this makes us more emotional, more sensitive, also more private. We tend to kind of bring it in more during the couple days when Moon transits through Cancer. So we more want to stick with what we know or what we're familiar with. We want to stick with, friends, family that are very close, more so with Moon in Cancer. We tend to be more sensitive. Moon will leave, it has left by now, that harmonious aspect it was making with the Sun. So that is taken away. It's not necessarily a contentious aspect it makes now. It's just not as, stable and harmonious as it was. But it's not necessarily a difficult aspect either. It's more neutral now, I would say. We do have one aspect on Wednesday. That would be Sun sextile Chiron. Chiron is at 12 degrees Aries, and Sun will make a sextile with it from 12 degrees Aquarius. And I think this is really nice. Chiron in Aries, I've mentioned, pretty much represents how since 2018 we've become, as a society, very, triggered, offended, and a lot of past trauma or wounds have been brought up, and, especially minorities or different people have kind of demanded greater understanding, demanded higher empathy, and a lot of this has been productive, and a lot of it has been very unproductive. I don't want to cast too much judgment on it or get too. I feel like even talking about it is very contentious or controversial. It's controversial in its nature. So this is a very kind of unstable energy. I think it's very sensitive. But I think this sextile from Sun and Aquarius is almost kind of perfect, because Sun and Aquarius is a sort of detached, sort of fatherly kind of energy. So I think it's almost the perfect energy to kind of softly but also strongly and bluntly put this energy in its place. Not to say that it's dominating it at all, but to say that it's kind of just maybe putting up some kind of structure to it. So I'll try to talk in a more mundane term. So basically, on Wednesday, this could be an excellent day for having a conversation. Maybe someone or maybe a group of people does want stronger understanding. They want basically that. They want more understanding. They want to be heard. So whoever's in charge, whoever's the authority figure, is in a good place right now. They're in a good place to say, okay, yeah, I'm definitely able to hear you. Let's hear you for sure. But it looks like it looks like there's a strong potential for an equality here, for an equal kind of back and forth, mutual understanding, which is really excellent, because that doesn't always happen with Chiron in Aries. Sometimes, those that are demanding understanding can be so volatile and so emotional that they are not understanding, and they can actually create destruction or create further trauma, further hurt, if that makes sense. But here it doesn't look like that would happen, because sextiles are harmonious aspects. Sun in Aquarius is different enough to provide some kind of complementary energy, something different. Um, like in other words, whoever's hurting, they can relate to who they are speaking to, but whoever they're speaking to is detached enough to provide maybe a different way of looking at things, or um, to say, I understand your hurt, I understand your passion and your trauma, but I have a more detached kind of energy that perhaps could like balance things, if that makes sense. So this is kind of like a obscure, abstract aspect. I could go on about it much longer, but hopefully I've given you kind of an understanding of that. It looks like a good dynamic for having like therapeutic type conversations, if those need to happen, and politically, if there are protests, I could see this aspect being great for maybe ending protests. I could see governments being in a position where they may be able to do something to satisfy, they may be able to find some kind of compromise or some kind of solution that could be beneficial for everyone involved, or at least satisfactory. Okay, yeah. Other than that, I already mentioned how Moon will enter Cancer, so that does shift the dynamic. I do think it's interesting having Moon in probably, what could be seen as the most emotional sign, and Sun in one of the least emotional signs. Sun in Aquarius with Moon in Cancer. That is kind of an interesting dynamic. One of the shared themes of Aquarius and Cancer, though, is sort of like tribalism. Both signs have to do with community in different ways. So during this couple day transit with Sun in Aquarius and Moon in Cancer, we may be especially aware of, what kind of tribes are we a part of? What are our kind of roles with our families or communities, things like that. For Thursday, February 2nd, Moon continues on through Cancer, and Moon does make a trine with Venus, which I think is really beautiful. This is a pretty minor aspect. The Moon travels so quickly that I don't usually mention aspects that it makes with the planets, but this is just so beautiful because Moon is in domicile in Cancer, so the lunar energy is very strong. In other words, like the feminine, emotional, intuitive energy, all of that is very strong and kind of primal right now. But that is making a really excellent connection with Venus, which is exalted right now. So the Venus energy is also very strong. Both Moon and Venus are the most feminine planets. They both have to do with, femininity and sensitivity, emotion to some extent. But Venus in particular, of course, has also to do with pleasure, desire, aesthetics. Where's the pleasure in your life? Where's the abundance? So this is really beautiful, having Moon and Venus not only trining, which is the easiest and most harmonious aspect, but also both are in signs that are very strong and special to them. This means that the feminine energy is very strong. It's very much at peace right now. So we can all be very maybe secure with how we're feeling, secure with our emotions. Our intuition can be stronger. Our abundance can be stronger. We can naturally find pleasure right now. So really kind of beautiful vibes for Thursday for sure. Other than that, I did want to mention that we are kind of building up to that full moon. If you see the moon in the sky, it will look mostly full by this point. It won't look full, but it will look mostly full. You can see that it's getting there for sure. We are gradually gaining intensity as we approach the full moon here. So that, you may feel kind of a build up. Things are very harmonious with that little trine with Venus that the moon makes, but we're also gradually building intensity at the same time. For Friday, February 3rd, moon continues on through Cancer. It has left that trine with Venus by now, but it does make a trine with Neptune, so we can channel a lot of increased intuition again. A lot of intuition in general for Thursday and for Friday too. So if you are an intuitive person, you may get kind of, flashes of intuition or strong dreams, things of that nature. Also, just the ability to relax and kind of get good sleep or good rest, I think would be pretty strong for Thursday and Friday as well. But yeah, specifically Friday with that trine that the moon makes to Neptune, really intuitive or imaginative energies. If you are a creative person, if you're artistic, this could be a really great time for gaining insight or inspiration. Or just for anybody, we all need inspiration to maybe look at things differently, or to gain motivation, or to come up with plans or dreams or goals or what have you. So this could be a really great day for all of that. Also for Friday, we do have one aspect. The sun will make it to 15 degrees Aquarius today, and it will square Uranus at 15 degrees Taurus. So this brings about a little bit of volatility, a little bit of instability, but also aspects with Uranus can bring about shifts in consciousness too. So this is really excellent for intuition as well. This is more of a mental kind of intuition than emotional though. So I don't know, you may just get some kind of information that comes to you out of nowhere, or a shift in your perception on things, a shift in your viewpoint. I always say that these things come unpredictably with Uranus. So this may be a shift in perspective that you are not seeking or intending. You may not have even been wondering about this thing. Maybe you were wondering about something and then the answer just comes to you. But it could also just be something that you weren't even thinking about that just comes to you out of nowhere. That's pretty common with Uranus aspects. Because this is a square, it could be something that is very destabilizing. And I think that's kind of the nature of it. When you have a shift in perspective, it sounds great on paper, especially for those that are interested in astrology. We all want increased consciousness. We want to become more aware and stuff. But when you have, especially a very sudden or dramatic shift in consciousness or perspective, it is usually pretty unsettling because, I mean, change in itself I think is unsettling, but having a shift in perspective, it basically demands of you that like what do you do with this information? If you do nothing, then whatever your status quo is, it may no longer be satisfactory for you. So you have to decide. You have the increased responsibility of deciding, what do I do with this information? How do I apply this? How am I going to change my life around this change in perspective that I have? So anyway, this probably won't be a super big deal for most people. It really depends on where these things fall in your chart. If you have strong placements around 15 degrees Taurus or Aquarius, then you will be sort of targeted in a way personally by this. You will have really profound shifts in your thinking or your perspectives. But for all of us in general, you can look to where these points fall in your chart, 15 degrees Taurus or Aquarius. That would be the area that I would expect these changes in. And this could be a 1-2 punch type of thing. Whatever starts to change on Friday, or whatever does change on Friday, could just be the beginning, because there will be more change in this same area or in a similar area when we get the full moon on Sunday, because this also kind of triggers this aspect again. Okay, and then moving to Saturday, February 4th. By now, moon will be in Leo, so very early on Saturday, Eastern Standard Time, of course. Moon does leave Cancer and enter Leo. So I always say, when we have the moon in the sign, it will be full. We are in the midst of it now. We're already experiencing the full moon. It won't technically happen on Saturday, but we're already pretty much feeling it. We're not going to get that peak full moon energy till Sunday, but we're definitely in the midst of it on Saturday. So it kind of perfectly fills up the weekend, really. If you do see the full moon, it will look basically full at this point. It is pretty much full, almost. So with full moons comes a huge culmination and a huge release of energy. Things are very energetic. This is something that, even those that aren't aware of astrology can see pretty viscerally. Everyone is more active at this time, and I think these things are especially pronounced when we have a fire full moon like this. Sun is in Aquarius, which is an air sign, and then moon is in Leo, which is fire. both, air and fire are the more active elements. So this is a particularly potent full moon. Everyone in general will be more riled up, more prone to take risks or take action or to be more active in general. So so yeah, people always ask me, is this a good thing or a bad thing? And really, it could be either or it could be both. With full moons, you get more good things happening and you get more bad things happening. There's just more happening in general. Um, specifically, moon is in Leo, so this is a lot of really proud, fiery energy. We may be more expressive, and we're wanting to have fun. Leo is such a fun-loving, kind of childlike and playful sign. So we want to have fun. We want to enjoy ourselves. I think this could be really great energy for a party or for going out. It kind of perfectly fits within the weekend too. So, um, yeah, and I think if you did stay home, I mean, unless you're a very introverted person and your idea of a party is staying at home, then by all means do that. I think that would be a lot of fun. But otherwise, I think for a lot of people, if you, staying at home could be disappointing because there's just so much energy right now. You may want to go out and do something, be active in some kind of way. Leo is such a physically active sign, so I think we'll all want to be active, in our own way, maybe. We do have one aspect for Saturday, so that would be Venus squaring Mars. Venus is, let's see here. Well, Venus is in the last part of the 11th degree of Pisces, and then Mars will be also there, and it will reach early 11 degrees Gemini. So technically the aspect happens, let's see here. Let me double check this here. I actually don't think that's right. I'm so sorry. I do make mistakes from time to time. So we don't technically get that aspect yet, but we are already stepping in within orb from it. It looks like technically the square will happen at 15 degrees. So when Venus reaches 15 degrees Pisces and Mars is at 15 degrees Gemini, but already you can see that they are within orb of each other. So Venus is already stepping into a square with Mars. So this basically means that there's some kind of disconnect. There's some kind of stress related energy or friction, especially with romance, relationships, pleasure, desire. There's some kind of disconnect there. I think this is particularly intense because Mars is still gaining momentum from its retrograde period, so it's still intensified, and Mars is typically intense, but it's especially intense since it's still coming out of retrograde. So so yeah, there could be some kind of maybe intense situations romantically or with relationships or with pleasure or desire in general, not just in romantic relationships, but other areas as well. So I'll let you just kind of ponder that, I guess. Okay, but lastly for Sunday, February 5th, moon continues through Leo, and then we do get that full moon in Leo about halfway through the day, Eastern Standard Time. It will be at 16 degrees Leo. So moon at 16 degrees Leo or opposing the sun at 16 degrees Aquarius. And so let's first just talk about that, and then I'll talk about the square that the sun and the moon will be making to Uranus. So full moon in Leo, I talked about a lot of this on Saturday because a lot of what's happening for this full moon is already happening on Saturday. It's just that it peaks on Sunday. This is peak full moon energy, culminations, karmic events, meaning kind of you could think of it as like plot twist energy, or things that are happening to change the direction of things. I think that's common with full moons anyway, but this full moon also squares the nodes, not exactly, but roughly. So this means that we're roughly halfway between the eclipse seasons. So this is kind of a checkpoint, and when we get this full moon, it means that there's that culmination on top of it. So there could be things that are happening to change the course of events, changing our lives a little bit. Almost like an eclipse, but not as intense for sure. Otherwise, moon is in Leo, so again, this is a very playful, prideful sign, very confident. There's a lot of confidence right now, and a lot of a lot of us may be, very active right now, taking more risks, going out, being more active in general. This full moon makes a T-square with Uranus. T-squares tend to be pretty contentious. They can be stressful, and the reason why they're stressful is because squares make us, they basically demand change. And change can be stressful for us. Change is difficult because we get used to the way things are and we don't want them to change. We don't like endings, generally speaking. But endings are necessary. Everything ends. Everything changes. Everything's constantly changing, really. And, because this T-square is involving Uranus, this means multiple different things. Uranus is in Taurus, so a lot of these changes could affect us economically, financially. The economy could change kind of dramatically on Sunday. Different parts of the economy could change. Stocks could be more volatile today. But otherwise, this T-square with Uranus also brings changes in perception. So a lot of what I'm saying, will sound very familiar to what I said on Friday. That's because technically the sun made the square with Uranus on Friday, but now this full moon is definitely within orb of a square to Uranus on Sunday. So that's where I say something that began on Friday or something that changed on Friday may kind of cause something else to happen on Sunday, or there may be some kind of connection there. Or it could be something that's just dramatically changing all the way from Friday through Saturday into Sunday as well. But there's some kind of connection there from Friday to Sunday. Some kind of connection with a change in thinking, change in perception. Uranus is known to change things really dramatically, but what's interesting is the change typically, not always, but it typically goes from the inside to outside. So the change actually starts with how we are thinking or feeling or viewing things. It's a change in your perception. That's why Uranus is more of an air energy. It's not a fire energy. If it were a fire energy, it would literally physically change the environment, and then from that change in the environment, then would come your change in perception. But it actually goes the other way around. First is the change from within you, the change in your spirit, your psyche, your consciousness. That's what's changing. And from that change, then, through your free will is almost a catalyst to then change the physical. Hopefully that makes sense. It's not too abstract, but that's what's in the cards for Sunday. A change coming from the inside out, from our feelings, from our thoughts. Something is changing, like from above, or from God, or from the aliens, or whatever you believe in, whatever is kind of like channeling in from the ether. Something is kind of feeding us different information, different ways of looking at things, and then from that change, that's where we can change the physical, if that makes sense. But let's just put it in more mundane terms. Sunday will be a very volatile day, very active day. Lots of change, lots of sudden, unpredicted events. But still, I still think it's a good day for going out, or for doing something, or for changing something. It is an action-oriented day, so this day is, it's just set that way. You can't change that. So if you can be active, it will help to relieve stress, I think. Of course, it's always good not to like rush into things or make too dramatic. But it's one of those days where resting may be very difficult. This will be a great day for, if you did want to take action on something, today could be a great day for that. Or just being active in general. If you want to go out for a jog or something, or work out, or whatever you do to release energy, I think that would be really excellent for Sunday. Or it could still be a good day for going out, having fun with friends, something of that nature, because combining moon in Leo with sun in Aquarius, both of these energies love a good party. They love being around people and feeling that energy and getting that interaction and being active in general. Okay, so that's what I have for you this week. Looks like an interesting week. I mean, in some ways it looks kind of like a run-of-the-mill week, but at the same time, we're still in a huge transitional period, just like we kind of always are. And I am excited for some big transits and ingresses that are coming in March. I'm gonna make videos on that at some point, hopefully. But yeah, that's what I have for you. Next week, we do have Mercury finally leaving the post shadow on February 7th. So that means entering truly brand new territory, especially when it comes to the information we're coming across and how we're communicating. All of that will be very fresh and new going forward from February 7th. And next week, we also have Mercury entering Aquarius. So we can become a little bit more light in our communication, more focused on the future, more experimental. Not so heavy like we are with Mercury in Capricorn. Yeah, but I hope you have a good week, and I look forward to talking to you next week. And hit me up for a reading if you want. I'm still doing the $40 birth chart readings. Yeah, if you're interested in that, just check them out my website. It's manic.mercurian.net. Okay, have a great week, and I'll talk to you next week.